It's not turned on the audio.
Yeah, make it full. Oh, wait a minute.
Yes. Let's speak on the mic.
Testing.
So, mic check. Mic check 1, 2, 3. Oh. So just remember, no one is touching the audio. Yeah. Mic check. Mic check. Richie. Mic check. Mic check.
Incoming.
Hello. Could we all please be seated? We are just about to start the session for today. Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to the Policy Innovation Strategy Dialogue. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all today as we embark on a to see the powerful that arise from collaborative partnerships. Oh my God, that was a mouthful. So my name is Rajlakshmi Nirmal. I'm the communications lead for Policy Innovation Science Program, and I'll be the facilitator today. The goal is not just to listen from our partner experiences, but also to forge strong collaborations for future, right? So to do this, to kick this off, I would like to call a person who is a visionary, who takes care of the science aspects behind the CGIAR inventions, right? So I would like to invite that she would give a couple of remarks as opening remarks for today's discussions. Welcome, Sandra.
Good afternoon, everyone. Very glad to have you here. So let's talk about good afternoon. Very, very important topic for us. We want policy to be incentive. The other day we were talking about what policies. Policies are incentives. These are mechanisms incentivize the impact that we want to see. And the change we want to see, more than impact, is the change that we want to see in many, many different levels, right? So the Policy Innovation Science Program is a central piece of this, very important, because we can do whatever technology we do, but if we don't have the right policies, it's going to be very hard for us to be able to make that difference. And that goes also in how we actually incentivize markets, incentivize different levels into this, institutions to actually do that. Without policies, basically, our technology likely many times will sit on the shelf. So we put a lot of money to develop something and we don't get through it. That's one thing. Second message that I think is very important. So this new program, it builds on the success of many years and many initiatives. Because I want us to be looking forward. Because when we start talking about the past, we hang on the past. So let's look at forward, how we actually build this moving forward. But there has been a lot of work done over the years within the innovations. It's a continuation of that. Very important part of it. And some, just Nexus initiative, the, Foresight initiative, the poverty platform, all those things, many others, national policies and strategic insights, but it's built from the past, but let's move forward. Let's look at how we actually, what we need to do now that is different. Because as I told you this morning, the world is different. So we need to be thinking differently how we go about policies as well. So I think this program plays also a very important role in the global level, very important role in the global level, and it supports some of very important decisions. And I have already talked to the policy people. We all also need some very important, support in shaping some of the global policies. I mean, AI is one example. We do need guidelines. We do need policies to make sure that we don't create more inequality. That policy is going to play a very important role in this new technology that we're bringing, the digital transformation, the AI, the other things. So very, very important, and I think some of this global, we have had some recent examples with COVID-19, how important it was, to have policies put policy in place to how we handle the crisis. Ukraine, Russia war, again, another crisis. So when this crisis comes, we need to know how we go about it. And policies are very important and help us to guide our actions. So this is at the global level. Now, at the regional level as well, I think I just want to bring how very important. Give one example is how this program is going to work with the African Union is one example of how we are looking this in the regional level. Very important, but there'll be many other examples of that nature. At the national level, also there is the country policies, how we help support some of the implementations of our program at the national level, having the dialogue of the government, but also the local private sector and all that. Okay, so I talked about the global, the regional, the national. Now, this needs to go together. We cannot create things that end up creating problems, elsewhere. So part of the program is also to be looking at that, if you want, that juncture where the policies come together and how we actually going to be able to articulate that in a way that instead of creating incentives, we are creating disincentives. We are creating incentives at one level and disincentives. So how we balance those things, and and those things are important to us as well. And I just in that regard, I think is also how we examine the trade-offs when those policies are in place. Very important, because there are always trade-offs. So I think that's another very important thing that we want to do and look at. And last but not least, we talk a lot about what are some of the new tools that we need to be looking to actually help us to be better at designing policies, understanding the data, evidence-based policies. So what are the tools? And some of these tools are coming also from other parts of this portfolio. The digital, the data, some of the data from other programs that are going to be generated in other programs are going to be very critical to work with this policy innovations program. So when we look at the portfolio, I want to just send this message that we have pieces, but the important part is not to look at only the pieces, is to look at how these pieces support each other for us to deliver an impact. And at the end of the day, as I try to make a very strong message this morning, we're here to help the people, the communities, the smallholder farmers, and try to solve big problems and find solutions for big problems with science. That's what, and policies would be such an instrumental piece of this. We need policies. So I think this is going to be a wonderful discussion. We really invite our members from the private sector, from the government, from the national, global level today to really help us to shape this program, to help us to understand how we can connect, how can we, what are the entry points for us to have those conversations. And I think that's we're here today. So I wish you a very productive discussion. I do, as you can imagine, have multiple meetings going at the same time. So I'll probably not be here very long, but I wish you, I'll stay as much as I can. I wish you a very productive discussion. And thank you for coming today. Thank you for partnering with us. Our ambition is big. As I told you, we have a big ambition. We cannot solve it without you guys, with all of you and much more. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you so much for those inspiring words. And before we move on further and dive deeper into the session for today, we would like to know a little bit more about our audience here in this room. So we would like you to, the next slide, please. So we would like you to scan the QR code you see on the screen and log on to Menti, or just type menti.com on your phone or in your laptop and use the passcode. So just a couple of questions, and to facilitate this, I would like to call upon Sam Gutro. He's our program manager for the Policy Innovation Science Program, and over to you, sir.
Let's go to the other side. Oh.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Policy Innovation Science Program Strategy Dialogue. So to begin, I'd request, if you have not scanned the QR code, maybe you can go to the website and type in menti.com and enter the password. So I'll give you about a minute or so to get that done. Maybe the numbers are a bit too small. If you have any challenges, I can read them out for you. Yeah. Okay.
Passcode is 1217.
So the passcode is 12172239. Okay. I think we're in now. Thumbs up. Thank you. Okay. I think we move on to the questions now. You can repeat the passcode. Sure. It's 12172239. Okay, thank you. Thank you for responding. I'm seeing the numbers coming in, mostly CGIAR people. It's great. Researchers as well. It's nice to know who's in the room. Right. Okay. I think we have a number of responses. We can move on to the next. So the question here is, when you hear policy research, what word comes to your mind? Any word that comes to your mind, please just share it. This is anonymous again, so just put in the words that you think of when you hear policy research. Oh, yeah. Some interesting responses. Jargon, government, yes, of course. Double espresso, hard workers. Yeah. Evidence, indeed. Yeah. Impact, like that. Nice, nice. Keep the responses coming. We appreciate this. Yeah, I think what's coming out clearly is government, evidence, impact. 3 areas. Yep. If pre. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your responses. We'll move on to the next question. So the question here is, how much do you know about policy research within the CGIAR? Right? Very aware, most responses. Okay, it's good to know that. Somewhat aware as well, toe to toe. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, we'll wait for a bit more responses. It seems the responses have stopped coming in. Okay. I think, all right, next question. How much do you engage with policy research within the CGIAR? It's a good question to know how we're engaging with our stakeholders on our policy work. So I see many people are saying actively engaged. That's a good sign. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your responses. We'll move on to the next question. Great. So what do you think should be the priorities of the CGIAR policy science program to increase impact? So the open-ended questions will remain open throughout the session. So feel free, please, to come back and on that. Sorry. Policy engagement, food security.
Mic check.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay. Please go on. Problem solving, participatory, more funding. Yes, we all need more funding. Climate mitigation, food security. Co-creation, I think that's key for why we're here as well. Well, these are really good responses coming in. I think if we can get to 90 responses, we'll be at a good place. Okay, can make it 100, I think, an even 100. Nice. Productivity, partnership, soil health. Yeah, okay. It's okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. Now we request, these are the open-ended questions, so please post your questions during the session. So this will stay open for the entirety of the session. And thank you. Yeah, so thank you. Over to you, Raji.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for your responses. And to dive deeper, to get to know the program more, I'm going to invite someone who will talk about the program's vision and also the goal. So this person is someone who walks the talk. If there's a task or a challenge, I bet you he'll be the first person to roll up his sleeves and deep dive in. So I would like to welcome our program's interim director, Clemens Bresenga, to brief us on the program and the next steps. Welcome, Clemens.
Thank you, Raji. I would like to walk. How can I get this thing out of? So welcome. Thank you for all your answers. They are very sort of inspiring, but also diverse. And that's part of the policy, right? The part of the policy process as well. We have heard that from the elder statesmen yesterday as well, when they were asked sort of, what's your experience with policy? It can be messy. Someone was talking about, reminds them of sausage making a little bit here and there. So we don't really know how much of our evidence is there because it is essentially a process. I guess what we can all agree is that it is important. I'm glad that Sandra also agrees as the new chief scientist of the CGIAR. It is important. So now, next slide, let's try to simplify and disentangle this a little bit. So what do we mean by policy? So essentially policy is a plan of action, right? And it's about people. It's from people to people. It's not an abstract concept. It is a plan of action. And importantly, most of the policy is trying to address real world problems. And we have a lot of problems as we know it. So if you can just see on the screen, we have protesting youth in Nairobi, maybe 8-9 months ago. You must have read about this in the news. Why are they protesting? They don't have jobs. They want jobs, jobs, and jobs. Very important problem. How can we tackle it? Okay, then we go on to land and water and food systems. Wonderful. Now I can walk. Walk the talk. Okay. So we have problems with water. Sometimes we have too much water. Sometimes we have too little water. It doesn't come at the right time. We have flooding, etc. What can we do about it? Irrigation, other things, many things we can do. Land, soil acidity, soil depletion. What can we do about it? And how do these things interlink? Policy, really important. Then you see the trade. For decades, we thought we are increasing globalization. Now globalization is going back. We are all faced with a lot of tariffs. What does that mean for the world? What does it mean for the countries we are living and working in? These are really important questions, and we need solutions for this. So then we move to the solution space. Now there's research, it plays a role. We have parliaments discussing, we have other decision makers, we have lawmakers, we have other mechanisms. So it is a process. But in the end of the day, as the CGIAR together with our partners, we want to see impact on the ground of these policies. And CGIAR, as you know, is organized in 5 impact areas. I'm not going to read them out, but they are all very important to governments, to the global community, to the CGIAR. But here's where it gets tricky, right? Let's go back again. It gets tricky because there are trade-offs, right? So there isn't a single policy to address all these issues at the same time. So there could be a trade-off between economic growth that creates jobs and the environment, for example. It's quite easy to see how that could happen. There could be a trade-off between subsidizing fertilizer and increasing yields. And then the implications on the groundwater might not be great. And I could go on and on and on. The point is trade-offs are really important, that's something we are addressing in these programs. And then maybe even more important is the priority setting. All the countries, all of us are facing serious constraints. A lot of countries are indebted. The debt to GDP ratio is spiraling. The national budgets are shrinking. Development aid is becoming less. It's hard to raise taxes in a lot of these countries. So we are left with shrinking and limited budget, and that means we need to prioritize. We need to prioritize maybe between young and old people, maybe between productivity and environment, maybe between trade and domestic production and other things. And these are at the core of what we do in the policy program. Trade-offs, priorities together with our partners. Now the next slide. So this is basically the same story, but let's deep dive a little bit more. We have a more sort of refined definition of policy that we all agreed on. So it is still a plan of action, but it is a plan of action to direct resources. It's about regulations and behaviors towards a strategic objective. Now here the why, how, and its impact. So we already talked a little bit about the challenges and the problem that we want to solve in this program. Food system challenges, we all know them, but let's add a few to what I just said. There's a lack of transformative action. Maybe people do a little bit here. One ministry does this, another ministry does that, but where's the transformative action? Unfortunately, we have an increase in poverty and inequality due to all the crises over the last years. There is a lot of uncertainty also, and it used to be a world where we have a crisis, then we have some stable period, and then 10 years after the other and on top of each other. What are we going to do? It's becoming more and more complex these days. So that also means there is a demand for solutions from the international community, from government, from private sector. And there's no wonder there is often a lack of credible evidence. We talked about the trade-offs. Markets are sometimes not functioning. Now even the global market seems to become very dysfunctioning, in addition to the very local markets where we deal with lack of access, roads, other things. So very complex. And then institutions, some of them still keep underperforming. Okay, so what are we going to do about this? Basically, we have three actions here, and you see them in the middle in blue. The first big story is agenda setting, right? So what are we anticipating that people should be worried about? Maybe some governments are not aware. Maybe it's in 10 years' time. Maybe the international community should shift its focus. What does our research tell us? What is the big agenda that we should be focusing on? And we'll produce outlooks, policy and investment choices, and a lot of engagement at global, regional, and country level. Now, the second action is all around rapid response, right? Let's say the Kenyan government is planning to raise more taxes because we need more revenues. So that's a question for the CGIAR. What do we think will happen if we raise taxes? Does it really bring in more revenue? What is the impact on growth? What's the impact on poverty, etc.? Could be one example. There could be other questions, an irrigation strategy in some other countries. How are we going to do this? Other questions around prioritizing value chains, etc. So this is a rapid response. We all know policymakers can't wait. So we can't just always wait for 2 or 3 years until the research is ready. The second is the crisis response, and Sandra mentioned a few examples. It could be a flood in Pakistan, it could be a drought in Ethiopia, it could be a tariff that's upon us, it could be many other things. What are we going to do about this? And again, we have to be on the ground, we have to be quick, we have to work with our partners to find solutions. And then last but not least, action about capacity and tools. It's our analytical tools, it's our expertise, and importantly, we aim to improve institutional capacity, which is why we work with institutes like KIPRA in Kenya, and I'm sure Elda will talk a bit more about this, but also in other countries. We want to go beyond just giving a training here and there. We really want to strengthen institutions as they are. Now, this work is organized in 6 areas of work. You may have heard about the area of work story. Let me not go into this, but the bottom line is most of the areas of work contribute to all these 3 actions. We are working as one program and not as a dispersed set of areas of work. Now, why are we doing all of this? We are promoting science-based policy solutions, and we are focused on impact at international, regional, and country level. For the national level, we will be creating CGIAR country policy hubs, CGIAR people working closely and being based in countries and in other countries as well. Now, the idea is that this results in more effective policies, markets, and institutions, and it will improve the lives of people across the countries, across the 5 CGIAR impact areas. And whatever we do, we'll work with other CGIAR programs and our partners represented here on the panel, and we'll hear a bit more about them soon, together jointly to address the incredibly mounting challenges that we have. So thank you for all being here, and I'll hand it back to Raji if she is ready. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clemens, so much for those remarks and taking us through the science program. So the next, we come to the most important part of the session for today, which is the heart of the event, the panel discussion. So this is where we are going to hear from our partner experiences, and to guide us through this important conversation, we have an exceptional moderator for today. She has several years of experience in research and development, focusing on livestock farming. And I would like to welcome Isabel Baltenbeck. She is the Interim Deputy Director for the Policy Science Program. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Raji. we noticed that when we were asking you what we mean by policies, it was double espresso. And so I'm very happy that despite, or thanks to the espresso, so many people today with us. We really wanted to walk the talk, as Raji was saying earlier, and have good conversation, candid conversation with our partners, because I mean, policy research cannot exist in a vacuum. We cannot do it on our own. We actually don't like it. It's less fun anyway. So we really wanted as well to share with you and the experience with our partners, and of course get input from them as we have this panel. So let me ask them to come forward. Let me start with Mary, if you can come forward. There's one chair missing though here, yeah. So Mary is representing the private sector. I think let's clap for Mary, please, when she comes in. She represents the Kenyan National Agricultural Sector Network, and they are representing the different private sector actors in Kenya. They have about 1,000 organizations under them. So a very important person here, Mary. Thank you for coming today. And what they do is they coordinate issues when there was challenges that are faced by those companies. They are brought to their attentions, and therefore then they're going to the government, the different ministries to find solutions. So obviously lots of linkages, as you can see already, between ASNET and the policy science program. Next person on the panel is Mary. If Mary can come forward, and please as well. Sorry, not Mary. Nancy. Sorry, why was I? Only 4 names, and I already get mixed up. Sorry, Nancy. Nancy is as well from Kenya. She's an advisor with the Council of Economic Advisors in the Office of the President here in Kenya. She has lots of experience on the policy interactions and policy and research interactions, and I'm very happy to hear from Nancy today. Sorry again for the names. The next person is Elda. Let's clap for Elda as well. Thank you very much. Elda is acting executive director of KIPRA, which is the Kenyan think tank, where really lots of activities happening, capacity building, sharing of tools, sharing of data. Very happy to have Elda with us today. Some of you may think that you have a woman-only panel. No. We have Sushil here coming as well, all the way. Thanks so much, Sushil. Let's clap for Sushil. With the Joint Secretary in Nepal, in the Ministry of Water, Energy and Irrigation. And very happy to have you here. Right, so we have about 25 years to 30 minutes just to have a conversation about that policy and research interface, right? What can we do better? We've been in this business for so many years, and sometimes we do have it wrong. So we really want to hear. So let's hear first from maybe the previous experience. Experiences that the CGIAR in different initiatives, different projects had in terms of working with you. Let me start with Mary. If it's fine with you, if you can just explain to us what you've done with the policy work in the CGIAR, and if IFPRI in particular, of course, and what did you do, and how did it work, and what was the effect or the impact on your work and on the people that you represent? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Isabel. So, private sector. I want to just detour a little and just give why private sector in this CGIAR. The reason is because private sector gives a number of jobs. I would say that most of the jobs that are created by private sector. And we have about 16.7 million of informal conditions. We have 3.3 million jobs created by the private sectors. That is from the local to the national. And again, also I would say the private sector contributes right now to 7.6% GDP in the country. And it's looking at contributing 20% by 2030. And so our focus with CGIAR as private sector is the recent experience in 2024, where we had a discussion on the levies, taxes, and cess that are usually taxed by the Kenyan government to the private sectors. And why this is because the program was to enhance the effectiveness of research-driven policy support. And so in that nutshell, we're looking at a technical working committee. We had a technical working committee first with the CGIAR. And also, this was also an interagency that brought, apart from CGIAR, it also brought other technical working groups that contribute to the agriculture sector. And so also the member organizations are the ASNET. That is Agriculture Sector Network, is the national umbrella body for the agriculture. And then the aim was to ensure that eliminate multiple cess fees and charges to promote economic competitiveness in the country, starting from the farmers all the way to the markets. And so one of the things that we did is it started in 2020, the discussion in 2023. And so we had different meetings. And as it culminated is where we developed searching tools. And one of the things is we went to the private sector had to give information to CGIAR so that we discuss on areas of levies and cess per county, because we have 47 counties, and what are the experiences for each of the private sector. And there we grouped different sectors depending on the value chains. For example, we have potatoes. So the potato sector would give from where they farm all the way to the trade. And because the private sector, the potatoes will definitely come to the local market, and some of it go to East African market. So the whole value from the farmer all the way to the end. And so we had a sample from the maize value chain, onion value chain, Irish potatoes, and then tea, because tea is for export. And so with this, we were looking at what exactly would come up with some of the issues that really bedeviled the trade, because most of the private sectors were complaining about the taxes, the levies that are being, especially on the registration and movement of goods from the farmer all the way to the market. The supermarket, again, there is a VAT of 16%.
Sorry, Mary, let's just.
Yes, as you know.
Yeah.
So with all that, we're looking at how do we harmonize and come up with a position paper that will talk to the government. They can, some of it you can have zero rated and some of it can be reduced. Now, noting that we have two levels of government, we have the national government and the county. So the issue of where we have to harmonize between the national and the county governments.
Thanks so much. A very clear example where but your organization and the city came together, identify based on a challenge, identify recommendations and moving forward for Mary for that. Let's move to Elda, if you don't mind. So about of Kipra working with the CGIAR. Thank you.
Thank you. The Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis is one of the key think tanks in Kenya. And we have worked closely with the CGIAR in various areas. Key among them is in the updating of the social accounting matrix for Kenya, which also helped us as an institute to work on the CGI model, and in particular in the area of tax. We were able to also work with various the Kenya Revenue Authority, and this to a large extent gives us a very good space where think tanks like Kenya, in Kenya as KIPRA and also with the CGIAR institutions come together policies and also advise governments. Through this Kenya tax model, we've been able to come up with a very informative policy advice for the government. And this relates to the implications of the various tax reforms on livelihoods, as well as on income and on revenue. The other area where we have really worked so much with the CGIAR team is on capacity building. As an institute, we have the Kenya Economic Modeling Hub, where we are putting together various tools for policy analysis to support not only the national government, but also the county governments. And in this initiative that we have worked closely with the CGIAR partners, we have been able to not only build capacities, but also bring together partners who are of like-minded to look at the policy initiatives and also the tools that can be used, for instance, the nutrition simulator, where one is able to look at the Kenya food security simulation and the implications various interventions could have. The other area is on knowledge sharing. In the area of knowledge sharing, we do come up with policy briefs, and these policy briefs are available to the wider audience, not only in Kenya, but also in the region. And then finally, in the co-creation for research, which is very key. And as we look forward to this program on policy initiatives, we are very optimistic that with the various partners in the CGIAR, not only in Kenya, but also in the region, we'll be able to influence in Africa at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Eda. I think very clear example where you see some of the elements that Clement was mentioning earlier, the modeling, the capacity building is coming very strongly. So we want to build on that moving forward. Let me ask now Sushi about his experience as well. Yeah. That's right.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation. On behalf of the government of Nepal, it is my honor to speak in this important policy dialogue. We have a working relationship with CGIAR units, almost more than 40 years. So we deeply value the long-standing collaborations between CGIAR centers and the government of Nepal. And we anticipate CGIAR works in Nepal has been transformative, especially focusing on water security and food security. The activities are policy research, groundwater governance, capacity building on water, energy, food ecosystems, nexus solutions, energized water and food systems have been very effective. And we have been incorporated in our policy, that like irrigation policy, water resource management policy, and water resource bill. Some of the impacts of this policy are visible. Because of the water, energy, food ecosystem nexus approach of the developments, it minimizes the sectoral silos. And we are focusing the programs for the maximize benefit, minimizing environmental impacts, focusing on food security and water security. On behalf of the Ministry of Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation, we are drafting the NDC 3 for for making the plan, identifying the activities and making the plan of actions for carbon zero, the net carbon zero as committed by the country by 2045. We are integrating. I'm leading that workforce, and we are integrating energy, water, and ecosystems for meeting that carbon zero objectives. So this is also the outcomes of this Wi-Fi approach. And our country is very some remote, and availability of the water and the land are also scarce. The water are not available as per the demand with respect to time and places. We have to utilize the different technology, mobilize the society for the food security and water security. So in the one of the remote area in the Konali rivers, by this water energy food ecosystem approach, IMI, the one of the CGIAR centers, launches of lift irrigation program, which is the government is going to scale up. I am looking at programs as a pilot schemes. Similarly, in the irrigation management, displaying the irrigation management board information systems in a southern belt irrigation system called Boba irrigation system, we are expanding such management information systems to other systems as well. So, because of the CGIAR activities and its policy research, we are very benefited in terms of the food security, water security, environmental conservations, and achieving net carbon zero. I think
Thanks.
this for now.
Thanks so much, Sushil. I think that was very clear as well. A big focus on water, of course, in this country, and in the CGIAR, sometimes we think we don't talk enough about water. So very happy that water is really one of the central theme of the policy science program moving forward. So thanks for that. So you heard we've discussed 3 different perspective experiences from partners about how they've worked in the past. And as Sandra was saying, okay, as well, it's about moving forward and not to staying too much in the past. So now the next question is really about new topics, new research topics that the panelists would like us to explore together. Why that topic? How we could have worked together? And in that case, let me start with Nancy on that topic, since she hasn't yet spoken. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel. We all recognize that agriculture is an important sector for us in Kenya. It contributes a quarter of our GDP. It's also among one of the 5 pillars that we have identified under our bottom-up economic agenda, as we call it, the better agenda. And just diving in straight into what we'd like to see going forward in terms of evidence that we can use to inform policy. We also recognize that there has been a large initiative, which I think some of us are involved in the collection of data. We have what we are calling now the Kenya Integrated Agriculture Information Management System, or KIAMIS, which has managed to put together for us a lot of information around the kind of farmers we have, what are they growing, the different value chains. So we really would like and appreciate if that data was extensively used so that it can help us then know our farmer properly. If we take into account that we want the private sector to be involved, the first thing they usually do is know their customer, what we call KYC. So we now have an opportunity as a country to use the data that has already been collected. The database has about 6.2 million farmers, so which is a big cohort, and I'm sure it can continue to be improved. And that would be useful for us then to see how it is used. More specifically, we would like also to see information on the various models that we could use to implement our production subsidy programs. We have gone big in regarding to providing for production subsidies, both for fertilizers, which we have done through an e-voucher system. We'd like to expand that to include other inputs like seed, semen or AI services, pesticides, along the different value chains. So it would be interesting to see what kind of information or what kind of evidence that we can use to inform on how we operationalize efficiently these production subsidies. The other one that is critical that touches our private sector is a medium, small and enterprises, the MSME sector, which is also a pillar under better. We recognize that this sector provides a lot, as our colleague has already told us, a lot of the informal jobs that we have. So how can we formalize them? How can we ensure that we have enough information to support them so that the businesses do not struggle or are able to be sustained? Most of our businesses are agriculturally based. So what innovations, what value additions can we have? Value addition can we have to ensure that our products, our agricultural products change in form, and therefore are we able to leverage on arbitrage, we're able to expand our areas and access to trade. And that links very quickly towards the areas around trade and trade agreements. We have the Africa Free Trade Area, we have the East African Community, we're in COMESA. So other than looking at just internally where we have our domestic trade, where ASNET has really assisted us in looking around taxes and levies, tariff and non-tariff barriers for the external market. I think the area around MSMEs, businesses, trade, value addition, innovations, that would be critical because then it also speaks to our youth. And our youth are looking for jobs. Where are they going to get these jobs? Quickly tied to that, as my final point, the digital superhighway is another pillar and our better. And we know that our youth are very, very interested in this space. We are calling it the digital superhighway and creative economy. Again, we want to see how does agriculture become modern? How can we leverage on AI, on that they're calling it artificial intelligence, to pass our messages both to our young people to help them resonate or to make agriculture a sector that people can identify with as same as the way they identify with the financial sector. So those would be, I think, topics that would be interesting for us to hear from people. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nancy. You ask the questions to an advisor to the president, and you get a long list. And I think the list is for the policy initiative, but policy science program, but as well for some other programs. So I hope you have taken notes. Anybody wants to use 6.2 million databases? She's just there. And I think that's really, really clear. So on the same topic about what policy issues, what policy challenges that you would like us to discuss and see whether we can work together. I want to ask that question to Sushil as well again before we move to the next questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Isabel. Foreseeing the past achievements and looking the requirements, the future requirements, I think there are some prioritized area of the joint launching the research activity, jointing policy research, launching the policy research like water, energy, food ecosystem nexus approach, which is very fundamental for Nepal. So as Nepal's is rich in water, but the viability with respect to time and location is not matching. Sometimes too little water in the dry seasons and much water during rainy seasons, which causes losses and damage. Likewise, our hill area, most of the country is mostly hill area, which is fragile and very steep. So we have to consider the environmental consideration also for the environmental factor also. And the 23% of the country's area is the protected land and national parks, and forest cover is almost 48%. So for our economy and for our livelihood, we have to make more multi-purpose projects and utilize the energy for efficient water use and for sustainable food productions. So water, energy, food ecosystem nexus approach is very fundamental and very relevant for Nepal's we need to continue this approach, whatever the name may be, and to optimize the benefit with considering the vital ecosystems. For this, co-creations, jointly design the project with the CGIAR unit and the government, co-investment, mobilize the government resources along with the international expertise of CGIAR and the CGIAR funding, co-learning, establish the knowledge exchange platform to share Nepal experience with global networks. I think these are the joint activities needs to launch in the futures. Nepal government is considering CGIAR as a not partner, but as a catalyst for improving water security, farming practice, food security, and overall inclusive development through natural resource management. So our different policy envision these aspects. So our government policy is aligning with CGIAR research policy. So we also need to explore together innovative financing models. So as a government representatives, I would like to request CGIAR and the development partners to prioritize Nepal's in policy innovation, this policy innovation science programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, that was, if you can just switch off your mic. Yes, thank you very much for that. I think that's a really clear message, the importance of, what the CGIAR brings to a country like Nepal in terms of experiences from other countries, international ideas, and so thanks so much for that very clear message. So just move on to the last part of the panel discussion. We've been saying very nice things about ourselves, right? How great we work, and we do, it's very good. But I think there's always room for improvement, right? How we co-create, how we partner, how we share ideas. So the last point of the last question to some of my panel members would be about that. How do you see what can we do differently? That we have a policy science program so that we actually really work better together to achieve a better impact. So let me start with Mary, if she wants, about that topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Isabella. I think one of the things that would help to improve better would especially be in international trade. And this is reason because of the new upcoming trade issues, policies that are being put within the Kenyan market or within the East Africa. So you find that like today we have the new 50% by the American president. So how is it affecting the private sector? Remember that already some consignments are on the way to US. So what would happen when you have such? The other thing that I think also on research, we need to improve better. And I think is on the trade, still on the TBTs, national TBTs, and also food safety. And this will also come in together with the nutrition aspect. For reason being, when you find that from the farmer all the way to the market, whatever you purchase from the market, either processed, you can be able to really scrutinize and say, what is the nutritional aspect? And that's how you choose your products at the market level. So again, also on such. Then the third part is on digitizing space. That is on specifically on technology, because we find that much more the information that we have from the researches that has been done. If you ask a private sector in the let's say, for example, as far as Kisumu or the coastal region, some of them don't have an idea. And so it would be good that we have that kind of digitizing technology so that every information is disseminated and as much as information is also collected to inform on policy. And again, also involvement of value addition still as a technology because I think this is one space that really the private sector are behind, and we really need to improve on that so that we don't just sell our products as raw as they are, and improve on the value addition. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. I think that this was very clear. So let me ask Mary if Elda, sorry, Elda, if you were to do things a bit differently from in the past, what would be your take? Maybe 2 or 3 points about how you would do things differently. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. The first area is in the area of co-creation in public policy research. And here, the entry point could be sitting with governments and asking what can we work on as Africa to change the space, not only in food and nutrition and also the food systems, but also in sustained production systems and value addition of various commodities. For instance, in Kenya, we already have the Kenya Vision 2030 and the medium-term plan 4, which are quite robust in terms of the proposals for policy. But then what then we'll need to do as policy analysts is to go deeper and see what works and why it does not work and what can be done differently, so that we are able to enhance the intelligence and data gathering and also the communication of the same. The other area could be on impact, monitoring and evaluation, and ensuring that we enhance the analytics space of the data we already have, so that we can break down the evidence we generate, communicate it, and also create impact. And then finally, within the East African community space and the African Union space, we know Africa has a huge population, and this population is young. So our policies should think deeply on how to invest in this youthful population, because this is where labor for agriculture is going to come from, not only for Africa, but also in the region. Going forward then, as we look at beyond 2030 to maybe 2031 to 2063, we need to rethink on the policies that we have to review as countries and also as nations up to the lowest unit as our entry for policy analysis, so that we remove inequalities, we create impact, and we improve livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elda. I think that's, that co-creation part that you said, and this very specific topic, many of them are already in the policy science program. So thanks for that. So just to close that discussion, let me ask Nancy as well, how she sees how we can work better together. Thank you.
Thank you. Policy advocacy, I'll put it that we need to focus on ensuring that we consider that we produce material for different audiences, ensure that our messages are succinct. Policymakers like to hear it as it is, so, and simplified, yeah? So simplify after the economic models and the significant, not significant, make it quite clear what is it you're trying to say. So communication is very critical. And then most importantly, highlight the trade-offs that are there. If we take one policy option, what does it mean? Include the costs and the implication on financing, because for us, as already highlighted, resources are scarce, so that's not going to change. So it would be important that we just focus a bit more on advocacy and ensure that we are sending the right message as clear as we can to the right audience. And we have a space currently in Kenya right now. We have a Council of Economic Advisors that is available and listening. And we are using the evidence that is generated from the different research institutions and think tanks to inform policy. So if we could also get the information on a timely basis. It's good that we did, for instance, the work on the tax policy, but you may recognize that the budgeting process is almost complete. So if it had come a few months early in the year, it would have been more easy to incorporate into the tax policy. So timeliness is very important. So that's something we need to balance between our very rigorous economic models and timeliness and the turnaround time. And then how we message, very important. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nancy. I think that is very clear. That's so that's our problem, yeah, timeliness. So, but I think that's it's a key point. Okay, so you've listened to those points. Thank you. Let's clap for our panelists. Thank you very much. I hope you got a good understanding of what we've done. There's new topics, we all heard them. Some of us was actually really for the policy program. Some were possibly for other programs, which is really good. And then how we can work better together. So now it's time for question and answer. So as maybe there are some on the Menti already, we can check that. Otherwise, I think if there's a few questions, can we take them? We can use those mics, I think, on
Yes.
yeah.
So there's one question on the Menti. So we have next 20 minutes for the Q&A. And it's for everyone. I think it's for the team and for everyone. The question is there any opportunity for people in social science to work with CGIAR program on policy research? So Clemens, you want to answer this question before we move on to the next?
Yes, of course. Please reach out. I think hopefully we get a good idea of what we are up to, what kinds of partners, what kind of topics, what kind of methodologies we are using. So by all means, around the world, wherever you are, please feel free to reach out to us.
So I would like to hand over the mic to Jonathan. He's a scientist with Alliance Bioversity CET and also works with the Policy Innovations Program. And he would help moderate the Q&A. So yeah, okay.
Thanks, Raji, for that kind introduction, but also to Clemens, Sandra, and Isabel, and our panel also for the very detailed insights that you shared with us. I think this helps set the context for our next discussion. A Q&A, but I'm going to call it a dialogue or a conversation, which involves all of you. And before we do that, I want us to just take 30 seconds. Take a moment, just pause. If you like, close your eyes. If you like, open your eyes for 30 seconds. You can take a deep breath. Great. So this is a brief pause, but at the same time, we also now want to reflect. And some of the things we want to reflect on is all the things that we've heard so far. Policy solutions, agenda setting, innovations, institutional capacity, collaboration, keep it simple, work with the private sector, the modeling, the significant, the non-significant, and translate that, finance, etc. So based on that, I would like to find out from you, what are some of the critical questions that you have in mind, which you want to pose to our panelists here, but also members from our transition management team. And we have Clemens, we have Isabel, Joseph, Raji, and also Sam here, and myself, and Johnny. All right. So it's time for questions. It's time for dialogue. Let's know your thoughts. Who would like to start? You mention your name and then your organization and your question. Keep the questions brief. First person here.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, may I start?
Yes, please start.
I'm sorry, madam. Okay. Yeah, how do we say? Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. So I'm Althi. My name is Althi from International Institute of Rural Reconstruction, Dabalai, Cambodia. So not question, but just I would like to share a little bit about concrete experience practice on my country, Cambodia. So under the support of the Alliance of Biodiversity International Chat since 2022. So regarding the policy on nutrition sensitive agri-food system, so we started the first year, 2022, with the review of literature review as well as the policy review. So we came up with the conclusion of the policy, and then we presented the finding to the relevant stakeholders, to the government, private sector, and donor, bilateral donors as well. And then in 2023, we conducted a case study, best practices on the ground with our partners, especially along the Mekong River. Then we came up with a case study, best practices as well. And in 2024, we started to implement the best practice and the model identified from the case study. And then we finally, last year, 2024, we developed a guidance for designing, implementing nutrition sensitive agri-food system. So along the whole process involved with the private sector, government, Council for Agriculture and Rural Development, the top government, minister, cabinet, and also civil society and other partners as well. So these are our best practice experience in Cambodia. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that insight. I would want you to reflect on one thing, and that is what will be that key policy solution that really helped your engagement with the government of Cambodia, or will help our engagement with the government of Cambodia. But just think about it. I'll take one question here, then I'll come back to the room again to our lady in front here. So the first question is there any opportunity for people in social science to work with CG programs on policy research? I answered already. All right. Then let's take the second one to Nancy. It says, how would you like us to package our message and policy recommendations? Does the government care about our policy briefs? Nancy, over to you.
Thank you. I also used to ask the same question when I was at Kipling. But now I know better. The government does care, but the main issue is how we message. One, we tend to like to use very scientific big words, which is not a problem if the people reading understand it. But many times, remember, the policymakers are a mixed group of people. Second, most of our policy recommendations are not costed. So you're not telling us what is the cost of that intervention. Many times we are providing wish lists. There's a simple rule in research that you should give at least 3 policy options, and many times you give 5. You've not costed them. You're not clear what the intervention is. For example, if we say, I can use the latest, like the one on the tax policy that was just done. I went through and I was looking to see what would be the recommendation. Do we move to 18%, which is the same as the East African countries? Do we stay at 16%? How much revenue are we going to collect if we stay at 16%? How much are we going to collect if we stay at 18%? Which are the most often bought commodities that generate for us the highest amount of value-added tax? Which would be the implication if we gave those, reduced the value-added tax for these commodities? How much will the government lose? So in other words, what am I saying is that it is useful if you give options, that's one, but the options need to be costed, and the implications, the trade-offs, just what Clement said. The trade-off of in implementing a certain policy and not the other needs to be, and if you provide it even in a matrix, it doesn't have to be 3 pages. Even a matrix is sufficient. So long as they see, if we do this, it will cost us this amount and we will save or will gain X amount. That is it. Most probably the policy would be taken. I think that is the short and long answer. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome. Thanks very much, Nancy. So government does care, stop the shop. The wish list, cost your policies, trade-offs, and implications need to be considered. Then our lady here, your name, organization, question.
Hello, my name is CGIAR. I'm from Ubuntu Alliance. And one of my key areas is increasing access to information and data, but also collecting information and data from farmers to unlock alternative financing opportunities. So I've gone to a few, as you know, in the last 2 years, I've gone to quite a few conferences. And one thing I'm really struggling with, and I'm going to highlight, is how do we bridge the science policy implementation? Because it's okay to have science policy, but when you don't have the farmers, the businesses, the exporting agencies, no one's really discussing like the trade and investment, like especially like now where Kenya is a massive horticultural exporter, you export tea, coffee, and we want to enhance environmental action and climate action, which is great, but a lot of the reporting frameworks and some policies like the CBAM, now you've got the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, and only 1% of businesses. I'll go and ask a farmer, what are your nature risks and dependencies? And how many farmers across the continent can answer that? So my fear is, when we say we want more inclusive stakeholder consultations, do we genuinely have them? Because from the mobilizing finance and investment and trade perspective, we're looking at the environmental space and we're seeing nature risk, climate risk, social risk, and growing inequality. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And let me go back to the question board and then we'll come back to the room again. So there's this question here. I'm not sure if it's a question though, but I'm going to read it as well. It says politicians need clear message. Use of digital technologies provide access to mountains of data, which in my view do not help CIA. I'm not sure what CIA is. Maybe someone knows. Actually disastrous. I challenge his reliance in governance. Not sure if it's a question, but okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, I can explain. CIA is CIA, you know, like Kenya security. If you flood, for example, Hawa with millions of data, okay, that is not going to help. But if you can have the gist of it, and normally from common sense, from being in touch with the bases, with the people, you can advance the politicians in taking good messages. I use data a lot all my life. I am triple your ages here, but I use data from the time I was a kid. And now I learn from my 13 years old kid coding. So don't rule me out of that. But there are places where you need digitized information, like marketing, private sector involvement, winning and losing based on a wrong financial decision. You need data, but on those social, on those livelihood, on those affect 70, 80 million people or percent of the population who are rural farmers, depend on tradition, on bazaars, they listen to their elders. You cannot just mount data and come and advise the government. I think I'm right, okay?
Great, thank you. So data is needed. Maybe Nancy will respond later, but we also have something on the science policy interface, which I would want someone to also comment on. Isabel, you have a question?
No, it was just to reflect on what you were saying. I think what we mean by data, it doesn't have to be quantitative data. It can be individual knowledge is data in a way. It's some form of evidence. So for example, a government may actually react to a success story, for example, not only a matrix that Nancy seems to like. So I think it's about that broader sense of data. I think that is what we mean by that. Yes. I was just trying to reflect on your point. Thank you very much.
Both deterministic and stochastic data. That's what I mean.
Great. And then the size policy interface, Joseph, I'm wondering if I bring that question to your doorstep.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure I got the question right, but we did do some work recently, and we talked to policymakers, we talked to researchers, we talked to the private sector, and one of the things that came out clearly is that they all appreciate the role of evidence in informing policies, but there are challenges around aligning the incentives. What are the incentives for researchers to engage with policy? And what extent do the researchers appreciate the constraints that the policymakers themselves face in actually using that evidence, right? So how do you therefore align the incentives so that the policymakers, the researchers, and the private sector align their work in a way that the information, the evidence from researchers is useful, it's timely, as Nancy mentioned, it's available when it's needed, but also it's actionable, right? So that we can move from, here is a recommendation, you go figure out how to implement it. And therefore, they are working together. They talked about, let's have more interaction. Let's have more structured interaction in a way that you know what information I need, you know my constraints, and you can provide that in a timely way. Hopefully that's useful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Joseph, for that insight. Let's take another question from the question board, which says, how do you balance evidence and political realities in providing policy innovation options? Sometimes evidence can be blind to politics. Yes, and also our panel. I'm looking at Edda. I'm also looking at some in the audience. I have Jordan, and Clemens is also here. And I see Steve at the back also.
Okay, thank you. This is a critical question because policy space is political space. So you cannot do policy without politics. And that's why in most cases, when government cycles change, you have to also look at the priorities. So for us as scientists, what we have to focus on is the evidence and being objective in everything we do, because if we have the evidence and we are objective, then every politician will take your recommendation and also your evidence. Number two is the costing of our priorities. Because for politics, you really have to make sure that whatever you are recommending, the cost implication and the long-term implication comes in immediately. So it's a challenge to us as scientists to go one step ahead to communicate what we are coming up with and also give its implications so that the politician can pick it and also use it to create the laws, because the politicians are the ones who create the laws. Thank you.
So the policy space is political, and Nancy, you talked about advocacy. Maybe there is a linkage there, but let's take a question here, and then we'll go back to the board for another question. Please, your name and organization and question.
Hi, thanks. A very interesting conversation. My name is Una Murray. I come from Ireland, from the University of Galway, but I've worked outside the university for many years before that. Yeah, and I just think it's really interesting, the points that are being raised about the timing and, you know, having all that right. But I think also just to make a point about when we say the word policymakers, we should think, well, what are policymakers? And I think the last speaker just mentioned there's the politics, the politicians, but then there's the kind of civil servants, is that the word, or street level bureaucrats who are around them. And I think it's important that not to just use the word policymakers, just disaggregate into what we mean. And those civil servants have their own biases. You can invite them to presentations, you can share your policy briefs or find out what they're particularly interested in, but they're the ones who start the first position paper or start the first kind of list of options. So I think we should concentrate on those, and they're often invisible, really, or, you know, they're not the ones who make the political decision at the end, but they have a very, very strong influence in the political decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take a question here and then we come to Katrina. And there is a question to the panel. What is the, all right. One, okay, good. So what is the current tools or methods that your department use now to answer policy questions? I'm looking at Nancy, I'm looking at Mary, I'm looking at Eda, I'm looking at Sushil. Who wants to answer? You think about it. Let me take a question from Katrina. Okay. Ah, all right, not yet. The question is coming. Okay, great. So maybe his final reflection. Should I come to you, Mary, or who would answer?
I think one of the things that we take the tools is to answer the policy questions is we involve a lot of position papers and policy briefs, especially when you come up with the recommendations after the analysis that has been done. And this is what, and memorandums, and memorandums, that those are the ones that we present to the Senate, one, and the Parliament Select Committee for, especially for agriculture, for fisheries, and also for livestock, so that we have now what exactly is it that the private sector are looking for in that specific space of the discussion that they are raising. And also another thing that we also look for is also monitor the Hansard that the Parliament to see whatever that we proposed, whatever was discussed in Parliament, is it really, for example, like now the issues on subsidy for fertilizers, the private sector at a certain time were requesting them not to be left to the government, but to the private sector, because the private sector are looking at the space of what they can be able to do trade and all that. So by that instance, so we always monitor what is being discussed in Parliament and whatever the issues that we raised, if they are still being discussed and if they are appearing within the amendments that are in the Parliament, they're tabled in Parliament.
Many thanks, Mary. So I think we've had a lot of things that will be very important for us, especially for the Policy Innovations Program. And we've taken notes together with our partners. We'll be coming back to you. This is not the end of the dialogue, and all of you here also, there's an opportunity for us to start new dialogue and new discussions. And some of the key takeaways is that we need to keep it simple. We need to consider trade-offs. We need to see the existing tools and use them to generate evidence to support the policy-making process. So many thanks to all of you. And now I will hand over to Raji.
Yeah, you can.
The panelists a lot.
That was a very insightful discussion. So thank you so much. Next couple of minutes, we will just go on to our mentee again to quickly take a few responses from you so that we understand how the discussions went through. So can you just move on to the, I think you all would be already logged into the mentee, so you can just use the same mentee and the questions. Yeah, you'd like to take them, Sam, the questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Raji, and thank you to the panelists. So to continue with the mentee, we will continue to the next question. Sorry about that. So We'll move on to the next question. We encourage you to respond. So the question is, based on the discussions, what do you think the policy science program should focus on? Give us topic-wise kindly. Okay. Impact evaluation. Yeah, fertilizer, of course. Ties in with soil health. Input subsidies, yes.
Just for those who are a bit lost on the code, it's on the top of the screen here is 12172239. It's on top of the screen. I can repeat if you want. 12172239.
Thanks, Isabel. I think we'll give them a few more minutes to respond. Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question. Sorry. See impact featuring a lot, gender as well. Nexus. So identifying policy champions, gender again, trade incentives. Yes. Life. Of course, demand driven as well. And livestock for the Ilri folk. Okay, I think we have a sufficient amount of responses. We'll move on to the next question. So where do you think we should prioritize our work as a policy innovations program?
And those are the three pieces of work that Clemens was mentioning earlier: the agenda setting, or rapid response, and capacity and tools. And it's about prioritization, so we're great to get your feedback on that.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Do you have any suggestions for the CGIAR policy research program to increase impact? I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about this.
So for those who are paying really super attention, we had asked you the same questions at the start of the session. We're not doing any comparison here. We just wanted to see whether things have actually changed from what you've heard, the discussions, the panel, whether you actually have new other ideas in terms of how do we prioritize. Thank you. A big focus on, of course, having impact. Thank you. So really great response in terms of the engagement, the co-creation parts, the inclusive partnerships, as well the rigor, scientific rigor. I think that's very clear. And some example of really about political economy. I think that is something that indeed we have actually a whole area of work on that topic. So glad to see that coming up as well in that survey.
Okay, we're grateful for your responses, and we appreciate you, participating in this Menti. Thank you. And now I'll hand over to Raji for the next part.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for all your feedback and the patience of our panelists to answer all the questions. So moving on, we wanted to hear from the senior leaders. We invited 3 esteemed senior leaders from the CGIAR to give us some reflections on the discussions we had today. So I think one of them, Apollinaire Jikeng from the Director General of ILRI, was not able to make it at the last minute because of some hiccups. So I would like to call upon Yoswinen, DG from FPRI, and also we have Mark Smith with us, who's from EVMI, Director General. So I would like to take this moment to welcome you both on stage here and give some reflections on the discussions you have heard so far. Can we put our hands together for both of them, please?
Good afternoon, everybody. I am very pleased to be here, to be with you, sharing this moment when lots of work has gone into the preparation of being here, the design of the science program around policies, all the discussions that have been involved, etc., and the engagement with many people within the CGIAR, many people outside of the CGIAR, and it's great to have this moment when actually the program is underway already, because it started in January of this year. I think the issue of whether this is important is actually answered if we just look at the newspapers today or any media or iPhone report you get. I think it was brought up by almost all the speakers today. The reference, we're kind of living in a major policy experiment, if you want. Okay, so the world is undergoing, I would say is probably the right word, an experiment in various ways, particularly in the trade policy area right now with all the tariffs being introduced. But there's much more going on in terms of policies that are being introduced or not introduced right now, and of which we can, and in some cases, unfortunately, we can learn a lot. In some cases, fortunately, we can learn a lot if these are really good attempts to change the world going forward. I'm going to come back to the trade interventions at the end. I think we also think we've seen a significant cut in ODA over the past couple of weeks, but this is not in itself. I mean, we've seen this cut in many of the traditional donors, some of them more gradually. So there, I think we're also experiencing a significant change in policy globally. And we've had underinvestment in public investments in ag R&D, both in poor countries and in rich countries. And we've seen this now happening for several years, and it's clearly affecting productivity, and particularly sustainable productivity in the world. And these are all very important policy features that are currently being implemented. So there's lots of work to do in this area to do better on the policy world. Let me, before I go to some specific points, a big thanks and congratulations also to the teams and the leadership of these teams, which have been involved in putting this science policy program together and to develop it. I think both the current leadership, particularly Clemens, Isabel and their teams, but also the leadership of the team which was involved, which was leading the design of the science program over the past month, over the year, really getting to today. I thought the panel was really was fantastic. I mean, many different issues were brought up, clearly based on very practical experiences on engaging in their daily life, either with doing the research themselves or using research or interacting there, right? There were way too many issues mentioned. To summarize here, let me pick on a couple of points. First, things which came back, okay, is the many dimensions of policy. Okay, so in terms of geographical, there's local regulations, national regulations, regional, I mean, beyond national regulation, of course, global policy interventions as well. And so the importance of harmonization between all of these was mentioned. Horizontal dimensions, I refer to that when we think about the impact of these regulations, the policies on jobs, on productivity, on the environment, health, nutrition, gender, inclusion, etc. All these things matter. And it's fine-tuning these and seeing trade-offs. I mean, this was mentioned in the opening, Sandra mentioned this, is a really important component. And there's a vertical dimension along the value chain. So we basically have to think about these things all the way from the input supply companies or input supply organizations, all the way over the farms, the processors, the traders, the supermarkets, to the final consumers. Okay, it's important to have all this engaged. And also there, I think the harmonization of the policies is crucial. An issue which was kind of hinted at but not met explicitly is the bundling of policies. So if you put several policies together, what's the impact of that? And that can either they can reinforce each other, or they can basically have opposite effect. And so one policy may constrain the impacts of other policies. So it's really important to actually, the coordination issue is important. And there's both from the economic interactions that we have, but also from the political interactions that can be there. So this is quite complex. And for that, obviously, we need good data, careful analysis, the right models and methodologies to use this. I think the question which was put in the Q&A just now about the impact of the climate and sustainability standards that are being introduced all in the world, how that's affecting farmers, for example, it's a very relevant question. I mean, OECD just came out with a report where they refer to the fast and furious spread of these new standards. And so how can we analyze and what's the impact of that? And for that, we need an explicit value chain model. We need to see how the different stages of the value chains of all the way from the consumers, the supermarkets, all the way down to the farmers and input supply systems are interacting. So we have a flow of products. That's where we think about mostly, but at the same time, there's an inverse flow of information and of finance. And these interact all with each other. And some of these interactions are not working very well for institutional reasons. That's going to affect both the efficiency of the entire system and the distribution of the benefits and the costs in there. There were several comments related and questions related to the political economy of policymaking. We may come up with really very good advice, but if nobody implements it, or governments do different things for political reasons, why are we here, right? What's the relevance for our work? I think I have worked in my career in various occasions for international organizations like the World Bank, European Commissions, but also as for national governments. I think my lesson that is very much in line to the answers that was given. I thought was a very good response. You have to ask the right questions. For example, policymakers, when you talk to them, this is good for the environment, this is good for productivity. They are concerned, how is it going to affect the people who are voting me or supporting me, right? So the distributional effects of the policy are really important to understand if you explain the overall welfare effects. And that's a question that researchers not always take into account. Time is of essence. Once politicians, political parties have taken a position, it's very hard to change them. But there is a period before they take positions, and that's when your information and your policy advice has to be ready. So and then you can have much more impact on the ultimate outcome. So timeliness is crucial. So let me end by using this opportunity for a 30 minutes marketing moment. Okay, we are, IFPRI is having its 50th anniversary this year. Every year we bring out a global food policy report. This year's will be focused on what have we learned over the past 50 years in policy analysis and what are the big challenges going forward. So our report will be launched on May 28th. So I'm already inviting you now to join us. And we will have regional events in Africa, Asia, and some of the countries around. And my last point goes back to the first question I started with, the impact of the Trump tariffs. Okay, so lots of people are referring to. We have started working on this the moment they were announced, which was last Tuesday, I think. The first results are out, and I'm just looking at my iPhone. I was looking all the time because you will get a blog this morning in America, which I guess is still, which could be any minute now, or it could be in an hour or two, but then you should have the first blog out with the first results on this. This is early assessments. We'll have more results coming later in the week, but I think this shows that the CGIAR is timely, is relevant, and is at scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yo. Let me add my congratulations to the leadership and everyone involved in developing the Policy Innovation Science Program. It's clearly a crucial gearing mechanism for the whole CGIAR portfolio. Unlike Yo, and I suspect a number of people in this room, I don't come at this at policy and the policy science program from the point of view of an economist. I come at it from the point of view of an ecologist. So my own personal interests have been rooted in social ecological systems. I really liked, however, your point that we're living in a policy experiment, living in an experiment. And I think that extends to CGIAR and our focus on science and innovation to transform food, land, and water systems in a climate crisis, which for someone interested in social ecological systems is really at the meat of what motivates me. And so the policy experiment that I see us sitting in the middle of is an experiment the experiment, sorry, that I see us sitting in the middle of is an experiment in complex systems change. So, and in that, so how do we transform, just as CG's mission says, how do we transform systems that are interacting in very complex ways? And within that, policy is one critical tool for how we bring about and catalyze and deliver the kind of change that you need in complex systems to achieve the sorts of goals that we have in the face of tremendous uncertainties, tremendous context of dynamic change, which in these days that we're living in is accentuated even more critically. So I look at the policy innovations programs from that standpoint, and from the standpoint of my role in the International Water Management Institute, and therefore the role that both we can play from the point of view of water system science, but also the role that CGIAR and the Policy Innovations Program can play in finding really innovative ways forward in terms of how to use policy to balance all of those, balance and integrate and manage the trade-offs around the interactions amongst those systems. And for me, chief among those, the chief driver among those that we need to be looking toward how we find new ways forward with policy hinges on climate change. And the implications of climate change for food, land, and water systems. From the point of view of water, climate change changes everything because it changes what has been a historically stable system with variation and variability, but an historically stable system to one in which we don't understand, we don't know, we can't calculate the probabilities of risk, the probabilities of extreme events, and so on. So this forms a set of existential risks. That interaction between the complex interactions between climate and water forms existential risks to agriculture and food systems, to energy systems, etc., to ecosystems in the environment in complex ways. And CGIAR we have based upon the work of the Nexus Gains Initiative, for example, in the previous portfolio, some really great innovations and research to build upon in this upcoming or in the policy innovations portfolio. One thing I wanted to just highlight from that, because it exemplifies in an extreme way, it exemplifies the dangers that we face if we're not good enough, if we don't make sufficient efforts in innovation in relation to change in complex systems. So that example is from the Aral Sea Basin, which of course, with the drying out of the Aral Sea is a sad but symbol of catastrophically bad policy and catastrophic failure to understand the interactions between, in that case, agricultural policy and water policy and the environment. And so there's very clear and lessons in that example, as well as others around the world, in what we need to do, and also the kinds of tools that we need to help governments and help stakeholders in those contexts in the face of growing uncertainty because of climate change, in the face of what we term as deep uncertainty because of climate change, the extreme importance of not ignoring those systemic interconnections and the role that we have in trying to manage those in the current context. And the good news is that, for example, in the Nexus Gains Initiative, CGIAR has been able to work with, in that context of the Aral Sea, work with the relevant governments to look at how to integrate data and assessments and modeling for this new future in that context, as well as a whole set of other contexts where the challenges, where the history is not as catastrophic and extreme, but where the challenges are just as daunting as we look into the future, the Indus Basin, the Ganges Basin, the Nile Basin, and so on. So, and rolled into all of that, of course, is political economy, which makes none of that complexity easier to manage, but it's absolutely at the core of whether we're successful or not. So I think the science, the policy innovations program is going to be really interesting to keep an eye on, therefore, as we go forward into the coming years over the course of the new CGIAR portfolio. So thank you.
Your thoughtful reflections. Thank you so much. So I would now like to call upon our Executive MD, Ismahane Elaufi, to give her closing remarks. I'm sure her vision and experience will leave us with a lasting impression. Over to you, Ismahane.
Okay. Thank you so much. And let me declare that I'm the least qualified person to close this. I'm among eminent economists and policy practitioner, but it comes with the position. So allow me to do so. So guys, really what I want to reiterate is that this is a critical role within the portfolio. So having the policy innovation program is a must, and we couldn't have a strong portfolio without it. The second thing I want to say is that there is an urgent need for timely evidence, and the complexities and the demand for timely evidence. There is a need for policy and institutional innovation, and we can't do without that. We cannot navigate the complexities that we have, and particularly we'll be stuck in trades-off and unable to take the right decisions. So the policy program will co-develop research-based innovation. It's going to bring us analytical tools and services. It's going to help us really
have a clearer idea of what's happening in the future through cutting-edge foresight, impact assessment, and governance and political economy analysis. And only with that, we can really help countries, particularly, to really prioritize their food system actions and responses. I hope really that the program going to be dynamic. As we are talking, as both you and Mark said, and many of you said, we are in a very volatile geopolitical situation, and hence we need to be responsive. We can't be stuck in stone and having our work already predetermined without really responding to the changes in the world. So in 2025, as it was presented to you, the focus will be on innovative subsidiary policies, on innovative water policies, and on innovative youth policies. And the policy program has to be fast. It has to provide us fast, innovative support to help shape decision at all levels, global, regional, and national. I hope really, and I find it really brave from the people that developed the program to say that by 2030, our goal is for partners to take the lead on much of the policy research that we do in CGIAR. So we are almost designing the sunset for the CGIAR policy work, because it's not that we won't need it anymore, but it will be done by the countries. We would have developed the capacities internally to do that. And I want to really just recognize that Academia 2063 did so with IFPRI over a 15 years plan in collaboration with the African Union. So to close from my side, really as a scientist, and in my time in the work with the government of Canada and Agriculture, Agri-Food Canada, I remember we used to have, I used to advise the Assistant Deputy Minister of Research, and we used to have a monthly meeting between 13 science-based agencies and ministries, the fisheries, the agriculture, the environment, Natural Resource Canada, and so on and so forth. And it was always ADMs of science. And many times we invite the ADM of policy and they never show up to us. And one time we got one of the senior policy ADM showing up, and they told us it's because you start with a scientific question, not a policy question. If there is a policy question as the beginning, once you have the evidence, we will use it. And I think really that happened like almost 15 years ago. It's stuck in my mind. If we want to really do influence, we have to get them to give us the priorities, the issues, and then we start looking for evidence and bring it back. And I hope really that that's what we are doing in the CGIAR. Otherwise, our impact will be always much more lower than what we are expecting. Thank you very much. I was happy that I attended some of the discussion. I don't understand all of it, sorry, but I could see that really it's giving the right questions, it's the right debates, and I hope really that the program will be really the policy basis for all these other science programs that we need to make sure they bring up the solution, and those solutions are taken up by the political and the policymakers, so it gets to the farmers' hands. Because without that continuum, I think we're gonna really be all feeling much more desolation by 2030, seeing that the problems that we started with as we are designing the portfolio are still there or are even worse. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your inspiring words. And with this, we come to an end of the day. And thanks everyone for your active participation. We hope that you found this event fruitful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. It's a good Thank you so much. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Policy environments, and it's quite fluid. So you have to be aware of the local concept, but also that it does change and change. Very insightful as well.
Okay. Oh, you heard. Very, very good. Yeah, it's there's so much interesting work to be done now, particularly in that type of. Yeah, no, this was extremely. Yeah. Right. But it's fine, but you have to be academic right, then you can do the phone, and not the other way around. Yeah. There's a lot of work, a lot of stuff going out to advice which is not based on good science, and then not good here.
Science, right? More on evidence. Academics and policy ethics need gap. Why is there a lot of
It's also the politicians kind of, I mean, they're interested in getting into their thinking, right? And sometimes, yeah, politics may not be right. Okay, I gotta go.
I let's see.
No, it's so the motion we need to develop it right. From 50. If you want, well done. Brainwash is. And we make sure that makes it get to the. Yes, because we need to.
Thank you. All right, Jess.